Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about are the actual way the elections take place. And there's really nowhere in the Constitution that outlines how to actually nominate the candidates for president. The process itself is a creation of the political party. And obviously, a year or so before the general election in November, you have um, candidates who throw their name out saying that they want to run for president of the United States. Typically, the party in power, right now it would be the Democrats. Um, Either the president is the obvious nominee if he has the opportunity to run again, or the vice president is what they would say is the heir apparent. They would run next. And so if Joe Biden actually wanted to run and be president, there may or may not be very much of a contest in who the Democrats will have as their nominee. I'm predicting, though, in this next election that Hillary Clinton will also want to run. So we might have several candidates who want to run in the Democratic Party. But typically, what you have in the party out of power, and what we've seen the last um, couple of elections in the Republican Party, is that you may have 10 or 12 different people who, as Republicans, want to run for president. Well, in the general election in November, the Democrats can only have one candidate and the Republicans can only have one candidate. So we have every state either has a primary or a caucus, and this primary caucus season lasts from January to June. And the purpose of this is to narrow down all of these candidates so that each party only has one person on the ballot come November. Indiana has a primary, and our primary is held in May. And the purpose of these is to choose delegates that are going to go to the national convention, and or sometimes it's actually just a preference selection where you go into the voting booth on primary day and you pick the candidate that you would like to see on the ballot. New Hampshire always has the first primary, and Iowa always holds the first caucus. Super Tuesday is a Tuesday in February where you have a lot of states. In the past, it's been around 16 states that hold their primary. And a lot of times after February, after this Super Tuesday, since this has been going on for a month or 2 months now, a lot of the candidates who are, let me say that again, a lot of the candidates have already dropped out of the race because they haven't won or come in second or third. So by this time, usually Super Tuesday, we've narrowed down to both parties usually who the candidate wants to be, or who the states want their candidates to be. But this can go on until typically June, when the last states, and like I said, May is when Indiana has their primary. The National Convention. The National Convention takes place after the primary caucus season. So from January to June, the states have their primaries and caucuses, picking the delegates that will go to this National Convention, and then also stating who their preference is to be on the ballot in November. So come July and August, one party will have theirs in July, one party will have theirs in August, and there are several goals, but the two main goals for the National Convention is to nominate the president and the vice president who their political party is going to put on the ballot. That is actually the number one goal of the convention. And the other thing they do is to really pick out what the party's platform is going to be. And a platform is the formal statement on basic principles that the party is going to stand on. What are the objectives of the campaign? And the platform itself is made up of planks. And so each individual plank is like abortion. Where is our party going to stand on abortion? What is our stance on same-sex marriage? What is our stance on gun control? The death penalty, on and on and on. So they will come up, and you can actually look up the party's platform online. There's usually, well, there always is a keynote address that is given, which is a major speech given by the party's most accomplished speaker. Sometimes it's not someone well known, it's usually someone younger. It's an up and comer that they want to get some notice for. And so 2004, the keynote speaker at the Democratic's National Convention was an unknown member of the Illinois State Legislature, and that was Barack Obama. And I still remember watching the speech, and I was quite impressed by his speech, but no one had ever heard of him. And then 4 years later, he becomes President of the United States. The last couple of days of the convention are reserved for the announcement of the party's nominee for Vice President and President in that order. So they nominate the vice president, holding the president, as a big suspense, I guess. And the process that they go through is called balloting. And what they do is do an alphabetical state-by-state roll call where delegates announce their preference. And so what I'm going to do is show a few minutes of this, not because it's over an hour long, but I do want you to see how part of this works.
Please welcome Democratic National Convention Secretary Alice Travis Germond. I will now ask our Convention Secretary to call the roll of the states.
Thank you, Speaker Pelosi, and thank you. Now, according to the rules passed by this convention, following the nominating speeches for president, we proceed immediately to the roll call. The roll call shall continue until we have a nominee whom I believe will be our next president. It is now my honor to begin with the great state of Alabama. Alabama, you have 60 votes. How do you cast them?
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The great state of Alabama, one of the most diverse delegations in this hall. A state that is ready to cast the first votes of this convention for the next President of the United States. 48. Say 48, and I'll do that.
The great state of Alabama casts 48 votes for Barack Obama.
48.
Madam Secretary, the great state of Alabama casts 5 votes for Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Thank you, Alabama. Alabama cast 48 votes for Senator Obama and 5 votes for Senator Clinton. The next state is Alaska. You have 18 votes.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The great battleground state of Alaska, the frontier state that's turning blue up and down the ticket. Now, we will be electing Ethan Berkowitz as our next U.S. representative and Mark Begich as our next U.S. senator, and they will bring you real Alaska energy to Congress. We proudly cast 3 votes for the brilliant stateswoman who put those 18 cracks in the ceiling. 3 votes for Hillary Clinton, and we proudly cast 15 votes for the next President of the United States, Barack Obama.
Alaska casts 15 votes for Senator Obama and 3 votes for Senator Clinton.
Okay, so you can see this is a long process, takes about an hour or so, and they go state by state, and they also include the territories, so America Samoa, Guam, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands. They all get delegates that get a vote towards one of the candidates, and there are several thousand delegate votes that are cast, and once one of the candidates gets a majority of the votes, then they are declared the nominee for that party. So we have the party caucus season January through June. We have the national convention. One party will have it in July and one will have it in August, where they will announce who their candidate is going to be on the ballot in November. And then from September through October, we have debates between the 2 parties' candidates. The first televised debate was between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon. And it's interesting because those who just listened to it on the radio felt that Nixon had won the debate. But those who actually watched it were convinced that Kennedy won. Nixon had an injury to his knee, and he was standing very awkward. He refused any makeup. His suit that he picked washed him out, and he had been suffering from the flu recently. And at that point, Richard Nixon was the Vice President of the United States. Dwight Eisenhower told him not to debate on television against John F. Kennedy, who was much younger, extremely handsome, and just did much better on television. So the elections itself, you have the general election on the Tuesday following the first Monday in November. These elections are winner take all, which means the candidate who wins the popular election wins all of that state's electoral votes. So all you have to do is win California by one vote and you get all 55 of their electors. All you have to do is win Indiana by one vote and you get all 11 electors. They don't split them up, it's winner take all. They do campaign in most of the states because there are so many swing voters these days, and there are some swing states. Swing voters are just voters who have not made up their mind, and they're campaigning till the very last moment trying to get these people's vote. Swing states can go back and forth from one election year to the next, and then battleground states, these are states where the outcome is too close to call. The electors themselves are chosen on that Tuesday following the first Monday. That's what the general election is for, to pick the electors. The electors themselves don't actually vote until the Monday after the second Wednesday in December, which is 41 days after the general election. Once they do that, their ballots of all of the electors throughout the United States are signed, they're sealed, and then they're sent to Washington, D.C., where they're actually not opened until January and counted by the President of the Senate, who is also the Vice President, in front of a joint session of Congress. So if you look back at the election of 2000, Al Gore was running against George Bush. Al Gore was the Vice President, so he was the one that actually had to open and count those ballots. And then Inauguration Day is January 20th, and that was changed by the 20th Amendment pushback from March. Flaws of the Electoral College. The idea where the winner of the popular vote does not win the Electoral College. That's happened 4 times. We know that Andrew Jackson that happened to, and the most recent is George W. Bush. Faithless elector. A faithless elector is one who is pledged to vote one way but votes for a different candidate. There is nothing that stops them from voting for someone else other than they have made their pledge. That's never changed the outcome of an election. We have had faithless electors. And once they've cast their vote, there's nothing that you can do about it. And then the other flaw is the House of Representatives deciding. We know if there's no clear winner for president, the House gets to pick. If there's no clear winner for vice president, the Senate gets to pick. And this has happened 2 times. We know in the election of 1800, Thomas Jefferson is declared the winner by the House of Representatives. And then we also know once again in the election of 1824, even though Andrew Jackson won the popular election and the Electoral College, he didn't have a majority, he only had a plurality. So the House got to pick, and they picked John Quincy Adams.